24. None could stand up, her equal and her mate. A boundless knowledge, greater than man's thought, a happiness too high for heart and sense, locked in the world and yearning for release, she felt in her, waiting as yet for form. It asked for objects around which to grow, and natures strong to bear without recoil the splendor of her native royalty, her greatness and her sweetness and her bliss, her might to possess and her vast power to love. Earth made a stepping stone to conquer heaven. The soul saw beyond heaven's limiting boundaries, met a great light from the unknowable, and dreamed of a transcendent action's sphere. Aware of the universal self in all, she turned to living hearts and human forms, her soul's reflections, complements, counterparts, the close outlying portions of her being, divided from her by walls of body and mind, yet to her spirit bound by ties divine. Overcoming invisible hedge and masked defense, and the loneliness that separates soul from soul, she wished to make all one immense embrace, that she might house in it all living things, raised into a splendid point of seeing light, out of divisions dense, inconscient cleft, and make them one with God and world and her. Only a few responded to her call. Still fewer felt the screened divinity and strove to mate its godhead with their own, approaching with some kinship to her heights. Uplifted towards luminous secrecies, or conscious of some splendor hidden above, they leaped to find her in a moment's flash, glimpsing a light in a celestial vast, but could not keep the vision and the power, and fell back to life's dull, ordinary tone. A friend, and yet too great wholly to know. She walked in their front towards a greater light, their leader and queen over their hearts and souls, one close to their bosoms, yet divine and far. Admiring and amazed, they saw her stride, attempting with a godlike rush and leap heights for their human stature too remote, or with a slow, great, many-sided toil, pushing towards aims they hardly could conceive. Yet, forced to be the satellites of her sun, they moved, unable to forgo her light, Desiring, they clutched at her with outstretched hands, or followed, stumbling, in the paths she made. Or longing with their self of life and flesh, they clung to her for heart's nourishment and support. The rest they could not see in visible light. Vaguely they bore her inner mightiness, or bound by the senses and the longing heart, adoring with a turbid human love. They could not grasp the mighty spirit she was, or change by closeness to be even as she. Some felt her with their souls and thrilled with her. A greatness felt near, yet beyond mind's grasp. To see her was a summons to adore. To be near her drew a high communion's force. So men worship a God too great to know, too high, too vast to wear a limiting shape. They feel a presence and obey a might, adore a love whose rapture invades their breasts, to a divine ardor quickening the heartbeats, a law they follow, greatening heart and life. Opened to a breath is the new diviner air. Open to man is a freer, happier world. Her will was puissant on their native natures. Her will was puissant on their nature's acts. Her heart's inexhaustible sweetness lured their hearts. A being they loved, whose bounds exceeded theirs. Her measure they could not reach, but bore her touch. Answering with the flowers' answer to the sun, they gave themselves to her and asked no more. One greater than themselves, too wide for their ken. Their minds could not understand, nor wholly know. Their lives replied to hers, moved at her words. They felt a Godhead and obeyed a call, answered to her lead, and did her work in the world. Their lives, their natures moved, compelled by hers, as if the truth of their own larger selves put on an aspect of divinity, to exalt them to a pitch beyond their earths. They felt a larger future meet their walk. She held their hands. She chose for them their paths. They were moved by her towards great unknown things. Faith drew them, and the joy to feel themselves hers. They lived in her. They saw the world with her eyes. Some turned to her against their nature's bent, divided between wonder and revolt, drawn by her charm and mastered by her will, possessed by her, her striving to possess. Impatient subjects, their tied, longing hearts, hugging the bonds close of which they most complained, murmured at a yoke they would have wept to lose the splendid yoke of her beauty and her love. Others pursued her with life's blind desires, and claiming all of her as their lonely own, hastened to engross her sweetness meant for all. As earth claims light for its lone separate need, demanding her for their sole jealous clasp, they asked from her movements bounded like their own, and to their smallness craved a like response. Or they repined that she surpassed their grip, and hoped to bind her close with longing's cords. Or, finding her touch desired, too strong to bear, they blamed her for a tyranny they loved, shrank into themselves as from too bright a sun, yet hankered for the splendor they refused. Angrily enamored of her sweet, passionate ray, the weakness of their earth could hardly bear. They longed, but cried out at the touch desired, inapt to meet divinity so close. Intolerant of a force they could not house, some drawn unwillingly by her divine sway, endured it like a sweet but alien spell, unable to mount to levels too sublime. They yearned to draw her down to their own earth, or forced to center around her their passionate lives, they hoped to bind to their hearts' human needs her glory and grace that had enslaved their souls. But mid this world, these hearts that answered her call, none could stand up her equal and her mate.